There are more questions than answers regarding Joni Lamb's silence over Marcus' last moments. Why has she kept quiet about what happened in his final hours? What is she concealing? A startling development is that new information is emerging. And Joni might change what she didn't reveal. Everything we believe to be true regarding Marcus's passing. Did anyone aware there was more going on? Her silence is a powerful statement of the truth behind it. It's now time for the complete tale to be revealed. Get ready for the startling information that has been withheld for so long. The passing of Marcus Lamb came as a surprise to the Christian community in November 2021. He was a well-known and influential person who led the Daystar television network. Millions of people admired him for his strong beliefs and audacious faith. He was a vocal opponent of lockdowns and vaccination requirements, thus many were taken aback by his death, which was officially linked to complications from COVID-19. His untimely passing appeared to many to be an irony too severe to understand. Even though the world was in mourning, his closest friends and family weren't happy about it. There was a growing sense of mistrust behind the scenes at Daystar. After years of working with Marcus and witnessing his management style, people began to ask questions that no one wanted to voice. Marcus had a reputation for being thorough and active. Without his consent, not a single broadcast, guest, or show was produced. Everyone was aware that he was in command. Because the ministry and the Lamb family took time, people expected things to slow down and temporarily stop after he went away to mourn. However, it was not the case. We called you back so we could speak with you at your mother's request, and we gave you a 24-hour window from the moment we signed this. That's tomorrow between 2:30 and 3 o'clock. Please return to Arnold's office and sign the form if you are able to do so. Sign the document tomorrow when you've read it through to the end. Basically, you have until 3 o'clock. That's a whole day before the deadline for signing. Failure to do so will result in your removal from the board, your removal from your vice presidential position, and your termination as an employee. You are still employed. We are in that location. Daystar's path appeared to change almost instantly after Marcus's passing. Suddenly, projects that had been put on hold were advancing. The tone of internal discussions started to change. Many of the network's employees had been there for years, and they started to notice changes in the way things were being managed, how quickly choices were being made, and the increasing sense of urgency in the air. There was a strange feeling. People began to question whether more was happening behind the scenes than was being disclosed. Had there been warning indications that were never made public, or was Marcus' death truly as abrupt and unexpected as it appeared? It wasn't. Only Daystar's internal alterations sparked suspicions. It was Joni Lamb's response to the passing of her spouse. Joni appeared composed, almost too composed, in contrast to the rest of the world, who perceived her as the weeping widow. She was calm, determined, and prepared to assume leadership. Although some anticipated that she would. Instead of taking a break to grieve, she immediately got to work managing Daystar. Days were being spent making decisions that could have taken months. She wasn't merely continuing Marcus' tradition. Many individuals didn't comprehend the new path she was driving the network in. For those, this sudden change didn't feel right for someone who had known Marcus well. Silent misgivings and whispers were present, and they became louder every day. How could Joni be so prepared, so focused, and so unfazed by her husband's death? Some employees started to question whether she had been getting ready for this moment for a long time before Marcus passed away. Was it? Could it be that Joni had anticipated this? That even before Marcus' health had deteriorated, she had already laid out a plan for Daystar's future. The sense that Marcus' death wasn't as abrupt as it appeared was the most disturbing aspect of it all. Others began to wonder if Marcus had been ill for longer than anyone had thought. Was his death really a shock, or had his health been deteriorating for months? His close associates started to feel as though they were missing pieces of the puzzle. They pondered the reason of Marcus's prolonged absence from the studio during the weeks preceding his passing. Why had his voice kept coming up on broadcasts even if he wasn't there in person? The official account of Marcus's death didn't make up, and the more they considered it, the more questions they had. The feeling of uneasiness increased in the days and weeks after Marcus' passing. At Daystar, the changeover seemed too seamless and well-planned. As everyone else grieved. Long before her husband's passing, Joni was already making choices and moving on with plans that appeared to have been established. People started to wonder if the ministry they had created together was truly moving in the direction Marcus would have desired because of the rapidity of the changes, the way she assumed control, and the new faces that started to emerge in leadership positions. Although Marcus Lamb's passing was tragic, there was more going on behind the scenes. Many people were left wondering if this was a true loss that no one saw coming or if there was more to the tale that was being kept under wraps because of the concerns about his health, the quick changes in leadership, and Joni's cool-headed response to it all. Technically speaking, in order to do it, we had to pass a motion. Well, you were, in theory, gone. You had taken it out previously. I was dismissed by you. Because you didn't do it, that is. In a technical sense, you left the board. Vice President, you took yourself out. We approved a motion at her request to offer you a 24-hour window to change your mind before receiving your letter. From Daystar informing you of the current circumstances. Are you with me now? You get it? You get it? You must therefore go home till 3 o'clock tomorrow, pray, chat, or do anything else you like. Then return to Arnold's office and read that until you feel comfortable enough to sign it or not. We are obligated by it, just as you are by the rest of it, if you sign it. You have disassociated yourself from the Daystar officer and the board if you do not sign it. I would not have taken myself out. She would decide that. That's the result. The fact that you didn't sign it is yours. He's arguing that you weren't kicked off this board. You will be removed since you chose not to sign this. Following Marcus' unexpected death in November 2021, Joni Lamb took over as leader right away, surprising everyone. Joni's conduct in the days that followed depicted a totally different picture from the world's grief at the death of the beloved Daystar founder. She had worked with her husband for decades, and as a grieving widow, she was supposed to take a step back and deal with his passing. However, Joni took the exact opposite action. She took the initiative and assumed control of the network with unexpected confidence and quickness. This transition's rapidity was unnerving to many of people. For so long, Marcus had served as Daystar's spokesperson. A dynamic and fearless leader who has transformed the network into a potent medium for Christian television. Even though his passing was unexpected, those closest to him were thought to be reflecting, grieving, and adjusting throughout this time. However, Joni didn't exhibit the usual symptoms of a widow in mourning. Rather than taking a back seat and letting the ministry take its time, she started making choices right away that would affect Daystar's future. In the days following Marcus' passing, Joni took prompt and firm action. She soon began presiding over meetings, making executive choices, and even reorganizing the leadership of the network. Employees who had known Marcus for years began to realize that things were going far more quickly than they had anticipated. Suddenly, as if nothing had changed, Marcus was working on projects that he had previously put on hold. The network's momentum appeared to increase after it had previously slowed to a standstill following Marcus' passing. Speed while being led by Joni. She seemed to be going about her business as usual. A few employees attempted to justify the modifications. Maybe Joni just wanted to keep herself occupied. They reasoned that perhaps she was mourning in her own way, using movement rather than inaction to absorb her suffering. As the days passed, however, it became evident that this was more than mourning. Joni was not merely attempting to maintain order. Daystar was being actively reshaped by her. She wasn't just continuing Marcus' tradition. She was paving a different route, one that didn't appear to entail the same principles or priorities Marcus has previously supported. The speed at which Joni assumed leadership was among the most remarkable features of her leadership transition. She didn't wait for approval or hesitate. Some employees thought Joni would take a break to think about her husband's passing and cope with the overwhelming loss, but she didn't. She started making judgments right away. Arranging staff reorganizations and meetings. Suddenly, there was a renewed sense of urgency to projects that had been put on wait because of Marcus' illness or just because they weren't a priority at the time. It was unclear if Joni had been planning this the entire time given the abrupt spike in activity. To individuals who had collaborated closely with this quick change felt too calculated, too practiced, Marcus. Joni seems to have been intellectually and emotionally anticipating Marcus's death long before it really occurred, as though she had been preparing herself for this moment. Her quick takeover seemed less like a natural reaction to her husband's death and more like a business decision. Grieving didn't feel like a widow's. It was similar to a CEO taking over a company. The new Daystar leadership and direction felt more like someone who had previously plotted out a new era for the network prior to Marcus' death than a heartbroken widow taking over her husband's role. There was also a discernible shift in tone. Having always been quiet, Joni, and kind, she developed greater assertiveness in her new position. She was more than the bereaved widow. Now that she was leading the network, she had to make difficult choices. She used to be a calm, comforting presence in meetings, but several staff members observed that her tone had changed to one that was more determined and forceful. There was no space for hesitancy or second-guessing. The path Joni was following. Daystar got a solid feeling, as though she had already decided on the direction the network would take. Joni's transition into a leader involved more than just her choices. And it had to do with how fast she produced them. Joni began making decisions that would impact the network's future just a few days after Marcus passed away. These adjustments included organizational, budgetary, and content-related modifications as well as alterations to Daystar's future course. Employees who had worked for Daystar for many years began to feel as though they were being. Their voices became silent as Joni's new vision took precedence. Longtime employees began to feel alienated as they observed Joni's rapid movements. Some believed that Marcus's ideals were being supplanted by something else, and that they were no longer a part of the family. Joni's fresh approach to leadership wasn't about the principles of trust and faith that Daystar had previously been recognized for. It was all about control, efficiency, and advancing the cause at all costs. Employees who had collaborated with Marcus, followed his vision, and helped establish the network from the beginning began to wonder if the ministry they had helped establish was suddenly changing into something they didn't recognize. The inclusion of Dr. Doug Weiss, a counselor who had frequently been on Daystar and was well known for his work in relationships and healing, was among the most startling elements of Joni's rise to prominence. For years, Doug had been a part of the Lamb family, providing guidance and assistance during trying times. However, Doug's role at Daystar expanded beyond that of an advisor or visitor following Marcus' passing. His participation in internal meetings and decision-making increased quickly, and he became Joni's close confidant. Doug's growing involvement in Daystar's operations appeared to many employees to be more than just cordial assistance. It seemed as though he was becoming into a crucial component of the new system of leadership. A few employees found it difficult to adjust to this new situation. They did value Doug's contributions, that's for sure. They did. However, there were questions about the timing of his involvement. What made him so engaged in Daystar's activities so shortly after Marcus's passing? Given that Joni had her own network of reliable advisors, why was she depending so much on him for counsel and direction? Many saw Doug's increasing prominence as more than just a sign of a shift in leadership. It seemed like there was a change in power, and it happened too fast for anyone to completely comprehend. There was a sense of unease in Daystar when Joni assumed control. Employees who had supported Marcus began to wonder where the network was headed. Was this a brand new ministry or was it still the one Marcus had founded? The quickness with which Joni assumed leadership and the many questioned whether she had been ready for this moment all along given the way she changed Daystar's leadership. Her poise and promptness indicated that this was more than a grieving widow taking on a new duty. Taking charge of the network and leading it into a new age was a well-thought-out move. Joni Lamb's quick rise to prominence involved more than just taking over her late husband's shoes. The goal was to transform Daystar into something wholly original to her. Some viewed it as a power grab, a change that had been planned long before Marcus's passing, while others saw her as a strong leader taking on a challenging task. The way she walked, the choices she made, and the manner in which she depended on people like Doug Weiss questioned if Joni was indeed grieving or if she was already getting ready for what was about to happen. Her efforts ultimately demonstrated not just her strength but also the complicated and even unpleasant truth of what occurs when a ministry, a family, or a network suffers an abrupt and unexpected loss. The drama surrounding Marcus changed course when Joni Lamb's diary was found. The developments at Daystar after Lamb's death. It was more than just a private diary. It turned out to be crucial in revealing what many people started to believe was a far more intricate tale than anyone had previously acknowledged. As fragments of the diary were transferred from hand to hand among family members and trusted personnel, what had begun as a soft whisper gradually became louder. Show a different side of Joni than anyone had anticipated. As it should have been, the diary had been kept secret and hidden, providing Joni with a quiet space to express her feelings during a period of profound loss. But what individuals discovered within those pages was not consistent with Joni's public portrayal of the distraught widow. The entries lacked the unadulterated passion one might anticipate from a person lamenting the unexpected death of their spouse. Rather, they depicted an alternative image. Many people questioned whether Joan had already moved on emotionally and cognitively before Marcus's death even happened because of her portrayal of emotional detachment, resignation, and distance. The initial pages that were distributed were harmless. Sufficient. There was discussion on loss, mourning, and the burden of responsibility that Joni now had to carry. However, readers started to pick up on an unnerving tone as they continued to read. There were no fits of rage or fury, no frantic calls for assistance. Rather, there was a sense of peace. That seemed frigid to several readers. Not that Joni wasn't in mourning. She was, yet, what surprised people was the way she wrote about her loss. It was as though she had already come to terms with the inevitable and had readied herself for what lay ahead before it actually occurred. 1. One entry in particular caught our attention. Only a few days prior to Marcus's hospitalization, it was written. To some, it appeared to be a straightforward spiritual meditation, an affirmation along the lines of, "Everything is coming into view now. I just have to stay quiet. Let it unfold. God sees." Acceptance of the plan of God. However, it sounded different to many who knew the Lamb family well and had witnessed the emotional pressure that had been there between Joni and Marcus in recent months. It sounded as though the woman had already accepted the impending event. Her statements were calm, yet they didn't reflect the emotional upheaval one would anticipate from someone in her place. Questions started to come up as more people read. Had Joni been getting ready for Marcus's demise beforehand? Long before he died, had she emotionally checked out? The diary had no definitive response, but it was hard to overlook the mounting uneasiness among its readers. Some started to wonder if Joni's seeming composure following Marcus' passing was an indication of her faith or strength. It was a sign she had previously expected to see. The ease with which she assumed command of Daystar, the rapidity with which she restructured the network, and the extent to which she relied on Dr. Doug Weiss for assistance. Everything seems to fit the diary's tone. It seems as though Joni had planned her course of action long before Marcus died. Doubts were aroused by more than simply the diary's content, though. It has to do with its concealment. The reality that a personal journal, which was never intended to be. It was troubling to see that it had surfaced at all. In the first place, people started to wonder how the diary had been released. How had they obtained access to such a private document, and who had seen it? The rumors about the diary started to spread like wildfire, with some people speculating that it was a planned preparation, while others said Joni's feelings had been concealed behind a facade. For her position of leadership. One thing was certain, regardless of whether Joni had kept the diary secret on purpose or if it was only a string of accidental disclosures. Marcus's demise was more complicated than it had been depicted. As additional information from the diary started to surface, the emotional toll of what was being revealed grew heavy. According to certain writings, Joni and Marcus's relationship had been gradually deteriorating over time. People talked about emotional isolation, stillness in the home, and a marriage that was no longer a tight relationship. Although there were no shocking charges or shocking admissions in. It was evident from the diary's delicate undertones that Joni and Marcus's emotional bond had changed in the months preceding his passing. Among the entries, one in particular resonated with readers. "He is no longer paying attention. Not to anyone, not to me." It was an eerie declaration, one that revealed a lot about how their relationship was at the time. Some people's perceptions of Joni were completely altered by this discovery. The devastated widow who had so openly lamented her husband's passing, the woman they had seen on TV, now seemed to have already started to emotionally and psychologically distance herself from the union. And that made her role in Daystar's future even more uncertain. Did anyone know how long Joni had been planning for this change? Had she already made up her mind that, after Marcus left, she would take over the network? Additionally, the diary's discovery fueled mistrust regarding the timing of Daystar's leadership transitions. Property was transferred and legal documents were submitted in the days immediately after Marcus's passing. Daystar overhauled its leadership structure incredibly quickly. Some insiders and former employees were astounded by how swiftly everything was occurring, nearly. It was as if it had been prearranged. Without hesitation, Joni assumed her new position as Daystar's commander. And the family's long-standing friend, Dr. Doug Weiss, soon emerged as a key player in the decision-making process. These alterations seemed to happen more quickly than merely a logical reaction to Marcus' passing. It was as though a predetermined plan had been put into action before anyone had had time to come to terms with the loss. As the Daystar staff continued to debate the contents of the diary, their growing skepticism only grew. Some thought it was a private subject that didn't require close examination, while others believed that the diary's disclosures were essential to comprehending what had actually transpired behind closed doors. Although the diary didn't have all the answers, it raised a number of issues that nobody could ignore. Was Joni emotionally ready for Marcus's passing? Had she already begun to establish herself as Daystar's leader? Was it truly a smooth transition to her leadership? Or was it prearranged long before Marcus passed away? Not only did Joni's diary's discovery alter public perception of the Lamb family, it changed how Marcus's death and Daystar's future were portrayed. What was first observed once an abrupt and terrible loss now appeared to be the start of a more intricate and extensive tale. The secrecy surrounding the diary, Joni's quick rise to leadership, and her composure in the face of her husband's death all contributed to an uneasy atmosphere that was difficult for anybody to overcome. The doubtful murmurs intensified. Louder, and whatever the truth is remained concealed within the pages of a journal that was never supposed to be seen.